Wars have been fought for various reasons like power, resources, territory, and ideology. But some wars in history are downright strange and bizarre. Today we will look at 5 such wars and find out what made them so strange. The War of the Bucket. This war took place in 1325 and was a result of years of animosity between the two cities. Bologna and Modena were constantly in conflict over their borders, trade, and alliances. The bucket incident was just a spark that ignited the fire of war. The story goes that a group of Modenese soldiers sneaked into Bologna and stole a bucket from a well. This bucket was no ordinary bucket but was made of bronze and was considered a valuable and precious item. The soldiers took the bucket back to Modena, and the news of the theft reached Bologna. The theft of the bucket was seen as an insult to the people of Bologna, and they demanded that it be returned. Modena refused, and this led to an all-out war between the two cities. The war lasted for several months, and both sides suffered heavy losses. In the end, Modena emerged as the winner, but the bucket remained in Bologna. The bucket was hung in the town hall of Bologna, and it became a symbol of their victory. The people of Bologna celebrated their victory every year, and the bucket became a famous relic of the war. The War of the Bucket is often regarded as a prime example of how petty disputes can escalate into full-scale wars. The war over a bucket seems absurd, but it was a manifestation of the deep-seated rivalry and hatred between the two cities. The War of the Bucket is a strange and bizarre event in history, fought over a bucket. It may seem ridiculous, but it is a reminder of how wars can start over the most trivial of reasons. The Pig War. In the mid-1800s, the San Juan Islands, located in the Pacific Northwest, were disputed territory between the United States and Great Britain. Both countries claimed ownership of the islands, but neither had established a strong presence there. On June 15, 1859, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler found a black pig on his property and shot it. The pig belonged to an employee of the Hudson's Bay Company, a British-owned enterprise. The employee claimed that the pig was valuable and demanded compensation for its loss. The dispute quickly escalated, and both sides sent troops to the island. The United States dispatched 66 soldiers, and the British sent 3 warships and 100 Royal Marines. The two sides faced off, but no fighting took place. After several weeks, both sides realized that the conflict was pointless, and no one wanted to go to war over a pig. The British and American officials decided to call in a neutral arbitrator, Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany, to settle the dispute. In 1872, the arbitrator awarded the islands to the United States, which has held them ever since. The Pig War is often cited as an example of how disputes can be resolved peacefully, even when the stakes are high. Despite the tensions between the two countries, no one was hurt, and the conflict was resolved without any bloodshed. It is also an example of how something as small as a pig can spark an international incident. The Pig War may seem like a silly and amusing event in history, but it is an important reminder that diplomacy can prevail over violence. The peaceful resolution of the conflict over a pig is a testament to the power of communication and negotiation in solving disputes. The Emu War. In the 1930s, emus were a problem for Australian farmers. They would eat crops and cause extensive damage to farmland. The Australian government decided to take action and declared war on the emus. In October 1932, the Australian military was sent to the Western Australian outback to cull the emu population. The soldiers were armed with machine guns and were tasked with killing as many emus as possible. Despite their best efforts, the Australian soldiers were unable to defeat the emus. The emus were fast and elusive, and they were able to evade the soldiers' gunfire. After a few weeks of fighting, the government declared the operation a failure, and the emus emerged victorious. The Emu War is often cited as an example of how humans can be outsmarted by nature. It is also an example of how human intervention can have unintended consequences. The emu population continued to grow, and the Australian government eventually abandoned the idea of a military solution to the emu problem. The Emu War is a strange and amusing event in history, but it also has a serious side. It is a reminder that nature can be unpredictable and that sometimes, the best solution is to work with it, rather than against it. The Soccer War. In 1969, Honduras and El Salvador were both struggling with political and economic problems. Tensions were high between the two countries, which shared a border, and the situation was exacerbated by a dispute over land and immigration. In June 1969, the two countries played a series of soccer games as part of the qualifying rounds for the World Cup. The games were tense, with both sides accusing the other of cheating and using dirty tactics. El Salvador won the series, but the victory was marred by violence and riots, both on and off the field. The tension spilled over into violence, and on July 14, 1969, El Salvador declared war on Honduras. The Salvadoran military launched an attack, and the two countries were soon embroiled in a full-scale conflict. The war lasted for 4 days and resulted in thousands of casualties and the displacement of over 100,000 people. After 4 days of fighting, the two countries agreed to a ceasefire, and a peace agreement was brokered by the Organization of American States. The conflict had far-reaching consequences, with both countries suffering economic and social setbacks. The soccer war is often cited as an example of how sports can be used to stir up nationalist sentiment and trigger violence. It is also a reminder of the dangers of unresolved conflicts and the importance of diplomacy in preventing violence. The soccer war is a strange and tragic event in history, but it is also a warning about the power of nationalism and the dangers of unresolved conflicts. The conflict between Honduras and El Salvador was triggered by a soccer game, but its roots ran deep, and the consequences were far-reaching. The Cod Wars. In the 1950s and 1960s, fishing became a major industry in Iceland. The country's economy relied heavily on fishing, and the Icelandic government implemented policies to protect its fishing grounds. This led to conflicts with other countries, particularly the United Kingdom, which also relied heavily on fishing. The First Cod War began in 1958 when Iceland extended its fishing limits from 4 nautical miles to 12 nautical miles. The United Kingdom objected, arguing that the new limits infringed on its fishing rights. Tensions between the two countries escalated, and the Royal Navy was sent to protect British fishing boats. The Second Cod War took place in 1972 when Iceland extended its fishing limits to 50 nautical miles. The United Kingdom once again objected, and tensions between the two countries rose. The British government threatened to use force to protect its fishing boats, and the Royal Navy was deployed once again. The Third Cod War took place in 1975 when Iceland extended its fishing limits to 200 nautical miles. The United Kingdom again objected, but this time, it did not send the Royal Navy. Instead, the two countries negotiated a resolution, and a new agreement was reached. The Cod Wars had far-reaching consequences for both Iceland and the United Kingdom. Iceland's fishing industry continued to grow, and the country became one of the wealthiest in Europe. The United Kingdom, on the other hand, saw its fishing industry decline, and the country had to rely more on imported fish. The Cod Wars are often cited as an example of how conflicts over natural resources can be resolved through diplomacy rather than military force. The conflicts also highlighted the importance of sustainable fishing practices and the need for international agreements to protect marine resources. The Cod Wars were a strange and unusual conflict, fought not with guns and tanks, but with fishing boats. The conflicts between Iceland and the United Kingdom over fishing rights in the North Atlantic had far-reaching consequences, but ultimately, they were resolved through diplomacy. And there you have it, the 5 strangest wars in the world. While these conflicts may seem unusual or comical, they all had serious consequences for the people involved. War is never something to be taken lightly, and it's important to remember the human cost of conflict, no matter how strange the circumstances may be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please support us by subscribing to the channel and activating the notification bell for more videos. Goodbye, and we hope to see you soon.